Needed that. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radhe Prabhupada 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 Jai Jai Prabhupada 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 Srila Prabhupada ki Jam Vishpad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Sotar Sata Shishimade Si Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki ISKCON founder Acharya Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastai Badle Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaur Vani Bacharne Nivishesha Sunadi Paschadistane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. You have the good fortune of getting to hear from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, 29th chapter, talks between Narada and King Prachinabarhi, text number 33. Yata hi Purusho Bharam, Yatahi Purusho Bharam, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Tam Skandena Sa Adite, Tam Skandena Sa Adikte, Tata Sarva Pratikriya, Tata Sarva Pratikriya. Yatahi Purusho Bharam, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Tam Skandhena Sa Adate, Tata Sarva Pratikriya. Yatahi Purusho Bharam, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Tam Skandhena Sa Adate, Tata Sarva Pratikriya. Yatahi Purusho Bharam, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Tam Skandhena Sa Adate, Tata Sarva Pratikriya. Yatahi Purusho Bharam, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Tam Skandhena Sa Adate, Tata Sarva Pratikriya. Yatahi Purusho Bharam, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Tam Skandhena Sa Adate, Tata Sarva Pratikriya. Yatahi Purusho Bharam, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Skandhena Sa Adate, Tata Sarva Pratikriya. Yatahi Purusho Bharam, Shirasa Gurum Udvahan, Tam Skandhena Sa Adate, Tata Sarva Pratikriya. Yata, as, he, certainly, Purusha, a man, Bharam, a burden, Shirsa, on the head, Gurum, heavy, Udvahan, carrying, Tam, that, Skandena, on the shoulder, Saha, he, Adate, puts, Tata, similarly, Sarva, all, Pratikriya, counteractions. Translation: a man may carry a burden on his head, and when he feels it to be too heavy, he sometimes gives relief to his head by putting the burden on his shoulder. This way he tries to relieve himself of the burden. However, whatever process he devises to counteract the burden does nothing more than put the same burden from one place to another. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. This is a good description of an attempt to transfer a burden from one place to another. When one gets tired of keeping a burden on his head, he'll place it on his shoulder. This does not mean that he's become freed from the strains of carrying the burden. Similarly, human society, in the name of civilization, is creating one kind of trouble to avoid another kind of trouble. In contemporary civilization, we see that there are many automobiles manufactured to carry us swiftly from one place to another. But at the same time, we've created other problems. We have to construct so many roads, and yet these roads are insufficient to cope with automobile congestion and traffic jams. There are also the problems of air pollution and fuel shortage. The conclusion is that the processes we manufacture to counteract or minimize our distresses do not actually put an end to our pains. It's all simply illusion. We simply place the burden from the head to the shoulder. The only real way we can minimize our problems is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and give ourselves up to His protection. The Lord, being all-powerful, can make arrangements to mitigate our painful life and material existence. If we could pray. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnananjana Salakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shita Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gourange Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vrishabhana Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta. One moment. Imagine you're on a deserted island. Not much food, no company. It's getting rough. And then a plane flies overhead. And you want to catch his attention because you want to get off that island. Chant this Maha Mantra as if that were the situation. It's a little meditation. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The first thing I thought of when I read this purport was pastime with Srila Prabhupada and Indrajumya Swami. He was Dasadhikari at the time, and all the devotees had greeted Srila Prabhupada at the airport in London, and they had gone to the Berry Place Temple. If you ever got to go to the Berry Place Temple, it was a thin building, and it had lots of stairs, lots of floors. Prabhupada's room was at the top, I think about the 5th floor. And there was a trunk, the old Indian-style trunks, metal, very heavy. And everybody else was in the ecstasy of being in Prabhupada's presence and chanting, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. He was given the service to take the trunk to Srila Prabhupada's room. And he dragged, kunk, 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 kunk. And the more stairs you climb, the heavier that trunk gets. And finally, when he gets to Prabhupada's room, he just busts open the door, dragging it in. And to his surprise, Srila Prabhupada was there. And Srila Prabhupada said, you won't have to struggle when I take you back home to Godhead. Oh! Haribo! Vijay shares more nectar. Give him a mic so he can repeat it verbatim.
When Indian Swami finally reached, he was so exhausted. Prabhupada came, of course, in the Indian Swami played obeisances, and Prabhupada slapped him on the back. And he said something. He didn't understand what he had said. But the servant said, "Boy, Prabhu, you just got the mercy." Prabhupada said, in the material world, everything is very difficult. But when you go back to the spiritual world, everything will be very easy.
Haribo! Back to Godhead Key. Thank you, Vijay Prabhu. That's what the association of devotees is for. The examples given, is it Chaitanya Charitamrita or Chaitanya Bhagavat? The birds fly in the sky and they encourage each other to fly a little bit higher and higher. And that's what devotees do. We buoy each other by each other's inspiration and encouragement. Bhagavad Gita as it is. As a point I thought I'd be saving till later, but it seems appropriate right now. I've quoted it before, but hearing, chanting, and remembering. The more one hears about the Supreme God, and this also relates to the two questions you've asked. How do we become determined? Why are some devotees determined and some don't seem so determined? The more one hears about the Supreme God, this is the last paragraph of 10.1 in Bhagavad Gita. The more one hears about the Supreme God, the more one becomes fixed in devotional service. One should always hear about the Lord and the association of devotees. That will enhance one's devotional service. Discourses in the society of devotees can take place only among those who are really anxious to be in Krishna consciousness. Do we really want to get off this island? Are we anxious to be in Krishna consciousness? Others cannot take part in such discourses. The Lord clearly tells Arjuna that because Arjuna is very dear to him, for his benefit, such discourses are taking place. The quality, we're recommended to do devotional services. And the quality of our services are enhanced by remembrance of the Lord. If you'll remain conscious of me and simultaneously render the services, you'll come back to me. It's not just engaging the body. That's the first step. That's the beginning stage, to engage the body, the senses, in the services that Guru tells us to do and how to do them, how not to do them. But we're trying to purify as our Prabhu yesterday quoted Chaito Darpana Marjanam, we're trying to cleanse the mirror of the mind so that we can see ourselves, so that we can see the Lord, so that the heart will be a fit place for Him to sit in and to accept our worship. So the quality of one's hearing will impact the quality of your chanting. If we mechanically chant, it's what we do every day, then we should be aware, why are we doing it? Are we doing it so we can hit that 16th round and put the bead bag down before we touch the beads again for the rest of the day? As Srila Prabhupada told, I believe it's Trivikram Swami, finished my 16 rounds, now I can do any damn thing I want to. Or are we chanting in mindfully? Why are we chanting? I mean, in the beginning, what is it? Chatur vidha bhajante mam, jana sukratanarjana, jana, arto jigyasa artarti, gyanicha bharatarshaba. Are we even mindful that we're suffering? That it most likely was the distress, the fire of material existence that brought us to Krishna consciousness? Or have we become comfortably numb? I'm okay. And therefore I don't chant like I did in the beginning. putting ourselves into it, throwing ourselves into it best we could. Or a step higher, are we chanting, realizing what can I offer? What am I chanting? They're names, they're not words. And they're not words of this world. And they're not just any old name. I tried calling Bhakti Jamal yesterday and got the old ring, 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 ring. Bhakti Jamal wasn't there despite my calling Bhakti Jamal. I want to talk. He's different from his name. Krishna's not different from his name. He's absolute. He is his name. He's all of his names. But what are we chanting? It's not that we can chant those names of Krishna, having Krishna dance on our tongue, if we don't realize that we're serving Krishna personally, that this is our one-on-one time. It is, practically speaking, the most important time of the day. But in what consciousness are we engaging in that sacrifice of chanting the holy names of Krishna? What can I offer you? I'm so insignificant. I'm a sinner. I'm an offender. Would you please manifest on my tongue to enter into my ears? The quality of one's chanting will affect the quality of one's remembrance. The more we become attached to the activities of devotional service, any of the 9 processes, but it has to begin with hearing and chanting. The quality of our remembrance, of our ability to actually be Krishna conscious while rendering devotional services. Nothing stands alone in and of itself. It's all part of the holistic process. I said it's, practically speaking, the most important time of the day because Srila Prabhupada says in black and white in the purport. So it's not something he said to one devotee and somebody can kind of say, oh, that's personal, that's not absolute for me or everyone in all places and circumstances. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita said the most important instruction of the spiritual master is to chant minimum 16 rounds a day. Prahlad Maharaj said, if you'll simply, he was speaking to his classmates, little demons, if you'll simply hear from me, simply hear. And Srila Prabhupada has said the necessary mood of hearing. If you'll simply hear from me, then Krishna, your remembrance of Krishna, your relationship with Krishna, your loving service to Krishna will be reawakened. Krishna consciousness is the most simple solution to all problems of life. And in a sense, this is like a parable that Narada Muni is giving to Prachinabarhi. Like Jesus Christ. He spoke in parables mostly because the people he's speaking to, they weren't that, how would you say? They weren't that advanced. They weren't that, in comparison to they weren't that civilized. They weren't that mature, certainly, in spiritual life. So he spoke in parables. Surely all of us can relate with this. I dredged my memory. And I tried thinking, what was the first time I can remember this parable applying to my life? And basically I could only, the most solid memory was when I used to lay carpet when I was about maybe 30 years old. I did it for a short 2 months maybe. But you've seen those big rolls of carpet that they have in the back of the truck, and the truck springs on the back are down like this. Those carpets are really heavy. And basically what it is, you got 2 guys putting it on their shoulder and carrying it from the truck to the house. And if it's a long distance, you got, wait. You try to put it to the other one. But it's bone breaking. I didn't last too long. I still have some posture left. The next devotional memory was carrying Srila Prabhupada in Vrindavan around the temple in his palanquin. And before he gave up his body, they had a palanquin that had basically the opportunity for 2 devotees to carry it. The stick or the wood was on the top of the chair, the seat, the palanquin, and 2 men. And they, very quickly, they put rubber padding on it or foam padding on it. And even still, when I carried it, the palanquin with Srila Prabhupada, oh my gosh, that was bone breaking because it dug into the shoulder bone. I used to be much skinnier, and oh my gosh. After just a little bit, I said, wait a second, flipped it over, carried on best I could. I certainly didn't make 3 rounds around the temple. Had to let somebody else carry it. By the time Srila Prabhupada left this world, left his transcendental form behind, they had advanced to a palanquin with 4 positions where servants could carry it. That would have been a little bit lighter, but I knew I wasn't really qualified. But the example is very apropos. We all probably have experienced it, carrying the heavy suitcase into the airport or out of the airport. Well, it gets heavy in this hand, so I'll put it this hand. You're not solving anything. You have the same burden. It's just shifting it. And that's what Maya does in her, the term was used, scam. I've used it also before. Her mirage, her illusion is that this is solving the problem. No, it's just shifting the problem. It's not solving it at all. And Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, takes it from the analogy of personally carrying some heavy weight to, how does he say it? He's very kind. Contemporary civilization. And whenever I hear that kind of statement from Srila Prabhupada, I think of that quote that was given by Mahatma Gandhi after he had visited, or when he visited Great Britain. What do you think of the British civilization? He said, it'd be a good idea. So what goes for civilization these days, for the most part, is just polished animal life, sophisticated animal life. But Srila Prabhupada kindly says in this purport, in contemporary civilization, we see that there are many automobiles manufactured to carry us swiftly from one place to another. Fantastic. You know, I can get here in 15 minutes if the lights agree, if traffic agrees. But the solution of cutting the time down, solving that problem of it takes too long to get from my house to the temple, that car, so much ugra karma goes into having manufactured that car. The earth is being raped. People are working in factories. Prabhupada quotes out the air pollution, the fuel shortage. He made an interesting prediction. Do you remember this one, Vijay? He said in 50 years the fuel would be gone. And we're right about at that point. It'll be very interesting to see. It'll be a whole change in society for it to happen. I don't see it like the Green Deal where they're trying to say, you know, some Congress people, that we shouldn't be flying in airplanes. You know, all that gas, the carbon footprint, etc. I don't think it's going to be like that. But we'll see. Because there is technology, no question, that doesn't depend upon fossil fuel for getting you from point A to point B. And you have the traffic jams and you have the congregation. So there's, and I've said it before, but it's such an interesting fact. When they first came out with the cars, Mr. Ford came out with the Model T. In Chatura's home state of Ohio, only 2 people had the cars. They were very wealthy. And so they were coming, and they had an automobile accident. They ran into each other. Yeah, right, Let? I mean, you know. The material world is perplexing. And this analogy has been that it's simply shifting the burden from one spot to another. Let's see if I'll be able to read this. I got one thing. I might have to ditch the YouTube for questions later on. Okay. This is another statement by Prahlad Maharaj. So he's basically repeating the teachings he heard from Narada Muni, as we're hearing from Narada Muni today. Come on. These things are nice when they agree, cooperate. I want to make it sideways. Oh, well. O Great One, O Supreme Lord, because of combination with pleasing and displeasing circumstances, and because of separation from them, one is placed in the most regrettable position within heavenly or hellish planets, as if burning in a fire of lamentation. Although there are many remedies by which to get out of miserable life, any such remedies in the material world are more miserable than the miseries themselves. Therefore, I think that the only remedy is to engage in your service, speaking to Lord Nrsimhadev. Therefore, I think the only remedy is to engage in your service. Kindly instruct me in such service. So here, he ups it, he takes it up a notch. It's not that it just simply shifts the burden, but it becomes a heavier burden. The solutions are worse than the problems. And we see that. Could I go down a long list. I think what we're doing right here is an example. But that's debatable. But that's what Prahlad Maharaj says. What's the verse with Maya Sukhaya? It says the same point, right? Can he have a microphone, please? I'll take it if... Yeah, thank you.
Bodh Vijay Purodottiya Vaitaranyas Twadvi Gayana Mahamata Magna Chitta Shocheta Tova Makchetasa Indriyata Maya Sukhaya Babamudvato Vimudhan. He used the same word Baram as used in this present verse. Burden. You want a translation? I don't have the exact translation, but he's speaking to Nrsimhadev. He says, "My dear Lord, I'm not at all disturbed because you're across the Vaitarani River and I'm always with you, and whenever I want, I can chant your glories and immerse my mind in an ocean of nectar. But I am lamenting for these fools and rascals who are turned away from you and are trying to enjoy this flickering Maya Sukhaya happiness. My heart is burdened for them, And then the next verse describes how he's going to preach.
This is the essence of Krishna consciousness. That a devotee who's heard properly. And hearing means doing. It's not like, I know I've said the example before, but it really stuck with me. In New York, when Tamal Krishna Goswami was giving a lecture, and afterwards, one of the brahmacharis said to Jayananda Prabhu, "Man, he was really heavy." I think it was a little, he's implying it was a bit much, hitting these points that sometimes aren't that comfortable to hear. And Jayananda Prabhu, he took it in the exact opposite way in which his godbrother had, where he said, "Yeah, I thought he was describing me perfectly." So that's how we're supposed to pray to hear the Bhagavatam, or when we read the Bhagavatam. We're supposed to ask, "Can you please let this manifest within my heart?" How do you know it's manifesting within your heart? You follow. You apply. What was Bhaktitirtha Swami's society that he registered? Applied Spiritual Technology. If it's not applied, what's the use? You get your armchair, You get with everybody else, get comfortable, and let's talk about it. Let's swap stories from the Vedas. What good does it do? That doesn't solve the problem. It's just another version of the problem. And I'll connect it in just a little bit, how that is so. Generally, when we hear from Scripture, it's going to say these burdens are the body, the relationships, the children, the job, the wealth, the horses, if you're a king, the elephants, the kingdom, etc. I and mine. These are the burdens. Anarthas. They're unnecessary. In fact, they're unwanted. Because they're simply binding us to that illusory conception that I can enjoy them. They're not Krishna's, they're mine. They're not for his service and pleasure, they're for me. So they bind us life after life. And the mirage shifts, it changes, it's immutably, how does it say, what is that? No, it's permutable. It's always changing. Yeah. Innumerably, immeasurably, unlimitedly changing. That's what keeps us going. Oh, it's just a little different. Just like the foolish animal running after the mirage. At some point, you take your last step and you fall down dead. Oh, but wait, there's more. Then you get dragged to Yamaraj, you get trained up so you can accept the next body, and then you and the subtle body go into the next womb and start all over again. It's been going on since time immemorial. So that's generally the way in which it's described in Scripture, in the old-fashioned cultures, when there was actually civilization. Now, let's make it a little more applicable. I got the latest iPhone. Or I have the latest, yeah. Really? I didn't expect that of you, Raj. You're right. Or, the man, keep it, the latest, what do you call it, tablet or computer, or, I couldn't help but notice Naranta Prabhu, he's had a long time, but he had a pretty snazzy headset, didn't he? Wasn't like the Bose where it's both sides. No, he's really was meant for broadcasting. Had the microphone in the ear, we get these little things, and they're not much compared to the non-devotees who are into collecting, as much as they can. But anything can be heavy enough to cause us to drown in the material energy if we're not using it properly. And there's that verse from the first canto where Narada Muni says, but these things, he gives us hope, but those same unnecessary burdens, when used therapeutically, can be the cause, or they can actually become the solution. The problem turns into the solution. When we use this body, we use these senses, we engage our relations, our relationships, our assets, our talents, in the service of Guru, Vaishnavas, and Krishna, then they're the source of liberation, not bondage, liberation. It's such a perfect process. Krishna is so kind, especially in Kali Yuga for us. It has to be simple. Has to be. Or we would never get out of here. We would never reawaken our relationship with Krishna. And I want to give some hope, because like Naranta Prabhu yesterday, he said, so always, continually, 24/7, then he tacked on 365. When you hear like that, oh man, that's a tall order, to always remember Krishna. Day and night. Continually. That's such a tall order. And the conditioned mind doesn't like to hear it. That's too much. I mean, it's just like they say that, resolutions are made by people end of the year, New Year's here. Let me get my act back together. It's time to get back on track. Well, they say 50% of the people who take those resolutions, those vows, by a month's time, they've given them up. And then after a couple of months, they say maybe 30% is still hanging in there. But the person who goes on and on and on, this is the determination once again. Very rare. As Srila Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who leaves. What's surprising about that? Be surprised who stays. Because being the jivas, conditioned souls, since time immemorial, it really is a declaration of war with Maya if we are seriously taking to the process. We're trying to completely reinvent ourselves as we have known ourselves. We really have to have our brains scrubbed clean. Like, you can say whatever you want about the military. Certainly one of the good things about boot camp, they come out submissive and obedient. And also they realize that I have far more potential in myself than I realize. Because if you have somebody riding you, forcing you, you do this, then you begin to realize more and more of your potential. And that's the way Guru, heavy, the spiritual master, he's supposed to fulfill that service to the disciples. Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta Jigyasu Shrem Uttama Shabde Parai Brahmani Nishnat. What's the last line? Brahman Upashama Ashraya. He's supposed to be fixed. He's supposed to be heavy, grave, sober. He's not there to chat with. Certainly not in the beginning. He's not there for my sense gratification to flatter my false ego. I've known devotees who have left their gurus because they thought I didn't get enough face time, one-on-one time with my guru. You have no idea who or what guru is. One needs to understand the importance of that. According to that verse, if you want to achieve the highest happiness, get out of this hellish material existence. So, it's not easy, but in the proper circumstances, with the proper attitude, certainly it's possible. And I wanted to share this one verse that I found very inspiring. We've heard it before. Oh, did I get the right verse? Yeah. This is for the devotees who can't 24/7 engage in Krishna consciousness. It's from the 11th canto. Pure devotional service surpasses knowledge and detachment. It's part of the Uddhava Gita. I think this is chapter 20. Text 27 through 28. Having awakened his faith in the narrations of my glories, Krishna speaking, understanding the futility of all material activities, and knowing that sense gratification ultimately leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all kinds of sensual diversions, my devotee should remain satisfied and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he sometimes is engaged in material enjoyment, my devotee knows that such activity simply leads to a miserable result, and so he sincerely repents such activities. Once again, Friday, Prabhupada stressed repentance. It's part and parcel of the penance, isn't it? You have austerity and you have penance. Penance has a repentive aspect to it. I know I've sinned. I know I have offended. The pure devotees, they don't make it past tense. They're not light upon themselves. They have the mindset, I am a sinner and I am offensive. Yet I'm begging you to please accept me as your servant. I had a Mexican godbrother, and he had a one-liner that always stuck with me, where he would say, I just want to be a devotee. And it's a wonderful one-liner. If we could just keep that in mind. I just want to be a devotee. But it's no cheap thing to become Krishna's devotee, or to become the servant of the spiritual master. Most fortunate living entities in the universe get that mercy. Not 99.9% of the conditioned souls, even in human body, not to speak of all the other species. So very fortunate. So you have to remain determined. You have to keep the goal in mind. You have to stay focused and on track. And I think it's a wonderful meditation. How do we remain determined? Here's another instruction. Hearing in association seemed to be the theme, and applying, obviously, to the best of your ability, and that's in peer pressure. The saddest thing is when somebody puts themselves in a corner and puts their walls of false ego up and, don't instruct me. I got my place, I got my niche, but don't instruct me. I don't want to hear from you. And they just carry on at that level. And that level, you think you can maintain, but there's no just simply maintaining, because that devotional service, mixed devotional service, the modes are always competing, as we hear. So even if you are somewhat in the mode of goodness, that steadiness of being in your corner, being comfortable, it just starts going down, because you're not honestly applying yourself. You're not learning the lessons that Krishna and Guru want us to learn. And Krishna will do whatever it takes to get our attention. Torturing the body and mind is nothing, because it's not us, it's a dream. It's not exploitive on Krishna's part to make us go through the threefold miseries, or for a devotee even who's fixed in devotional service, experiencing the obstacles, the challenges, and the suffering of body, mind, etc. Although not identifying with it, still it's going on. The experience is there. They're not robots. They're not unconscious stones. But by Krishna's grace, no, free from it all. So, what to do? How to become determined? Here's another suggestion. Tapas means austerity or penance. That was the repentive part. There are many rules and regulations in the Vedas which apply here, like rising early in the morning and taking a bath. Sometimes it's very troublesome to rise early in the morning. But whatever voluntary trouble one may suffer in this way is called penance. Similarly, there are prescriptions for fasting on certain days of the month. One may not be inclined to practice such fasting, but because of his determination to make advancement in the science of Krishna consciousness, he should accept such bodily troubles when they are recommended. However, one should not fast unnecessarily or against Vedic injunctions. One should not fast for some political purpose. That's described in Bhagavad Gita as fasting in ignorance. Anything done in ignorance or passion does not lead to spiritual advancement. Everything done in the mode of goodness does, however, and, concluding it, Prabhupada says, fasting done in terms of the Vedic injunctions enriches one in spiritual knowledge. Dravida Prabhu was my inspiration. For years he fasted. Body's getting older now, and I respect. You got to sometimes accept the arrangement Krishna gives us. But for younger men, it's just a suggestion. Srila Prabhupada said, it's about giving up the enjoying spirit, isn't it? I know for many a years, God, can I even say that I've gone beyond it? But Ekadashi used to look forward to it. I can say used to look forward to it, because sometimes you have preps you don't have any other day. I get to really enjoy that Prashadam. That's not the mood of Krishna consciousness. It's a level of Krishna consciousness. But, Srila Prabhupada knew what he had to do to present Krishna consciousness where it would take root in such a contemporary civilization as ours. He said, if I told you all the rules and regulations, you'd faint. We're so fortunate. The loophole given, I should say plural, given by Srila Prabhupada they're big enough to drive a semi-truck through. all the way home back to Godhead. But we, in our foolishness, in our attachment to the burdens, thinking that there is happiness in our sense gratificatory activities in consciousness, we don't even want to do them. The 4 regulative principles, the ashram devotees are following them nicely, as should every initiated disciple. But those, and that connects to the verse we read by Krishna to Uddhava, and in the purports, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he specifically says, householders, they have difficulty with sex attraction. But still, they should be chanting their rounds and repenting. They should realize, I'm so fallen. I'm such an idiot. This is for our householders. Because you'll never taste Krishna consciousness until you minimally get the foundation of the 4 regulative principles. You might get little tiny drops. But then immediately, the modes come in. No steadiness. Now that having been said, those 4 prohibitions, prohibitions, was that even a word? No, the other one I said. Sounded good in my mind. Prohibitions. Yeah. So, they're just meant to assist us to getting to the do's of chanting attentive rounds, of doing the services in Krishna consciousness. This coming to Bhagavatam every day, and the ones who really need it aren't even in the Bhagavatam right now. They're missing out. It's so sad. It is compulsory you come to Guru Puja or at home worship Guru every morning. You have your Mongol prayers to the spiritual master Samsara Dhavana. You chant your song to Tulsi Devi. You hear Srimad Bhagavatam, read Srimad Bhagavatam. This is compulsory if you want to become a devotee. Not an aspiring devotee, not a mixed devotee, not a pretend devotee. Maybe fooling yourself, but you'd never fool Krishna. These things are absolutely necessary. That's why they're given. But still, do the best you can. Because Krishna, any way in which you reciprocate with him, there's some element of affection for him. And Krishna takes that, fans it. He'll work with wherever we're at, patiently. And we should be the same way. The strictness is to be applied for ourselves, and I'll use the J word, not very popular these days, in judging ourselves. Understanding others, but being merciful and compassionate and understanding about others' inability to measure up. And when we see that, minimally we should pray for those who aren't able to, and we should try to assist those that we can. So, burden shifting, no solution. In fact, the solution to the problem becomes a bigger problem. The unwanted things are actually our attachments, whatever they may be, and separate from service to Krishna, separate from association in Krishna consciousness. But still, remain determined. Don't become depressed if you don't measure up. We should be hard on ourselves, but in a balanced way where we know that our Guru loves us. And if he does deem fit to chastise us, it's his mercy, and he's only trying to help us get to where we want, to become who we want, Krishna's servant. And we should help others, understanding that these activities of sadhana bhakti are compulsory. And every time we shave a corner, we're only hurting ourselves. And it may be impacting others also, but we're definitely hurting ourselves. So we have to ask ourselves, how comfortable are we with our burdens. Are there any questions or comments? I turned off YouTube, so I don't know if anybody's commented or questioned. Dravida Prabhu.
Raj, I'm sorry I don't have a question, but I have a couple of little things.
Please,
Okay.
stir the pot.
First of all, before I forget, I happened to go on Dundabots.com yesterday. And I don't go on there every day, but there was a wonderful interview, you might call it, with Dave Meter Maharaj. And the theme was the need to read Srila Prabhupada's books. And he told some such wonderful accounts, you know, how he came. I won't get into it, but he was reading. Right, he had gotten a pamphlet, the Teachings of Prahlad, you know, and he read that, and he was very attracted. And he found out how he could buy the books online. He didn't want to have anything to do with the devotees, because they were crazy. But he loved the books. And he would read them 3 or 4 hours a day before joining. He was so addicted to reading. I had no idea. He tells the story how he met Devi Shakti. He ended up twice. I did two checks.
She was the one that got the checks from me, Devi Shakti. It's nice when you get the details.
And it was on the basis of helping get the new temple.
Yeah, nice.
$2,000 check in 1972. It's worth over $7,000 today.
Yeah, easily.
And then she met him again, and she convinced him to give a second check. He gave her another one. It's like $15,000. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to mention. But what he gave was an account, because it goes back to your point of becoming determined to break boundaries and go beyond what you think is possible. He was there. I was right in the middle of it. I won't tell the story right now, but I helped him to get onto the team, the BBT team, because his health. He was a fired up book distributor. You can imagine, going on for a couple of years, but his health collapsed. He couldn't go out every day. And he appealed to me, can you please ask Radha Ballava if I can become a proofreader? You know, I'm a Yale graduate. He said, so he ended up, he went with us. We all went to the BBT, you know, to LA. And he, right away, the marathon came, and he was the main proofreader. But he told about the experience, which I was part of the marathon, but I wasn't there at the beginning to go through the whole idea of, oh, this is impossible, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know, I just came in. But I took part. But all the devotees, this is impossible. You know, they all thought that, not this Rameshwar. And how, you know, he said there was no place to hide. There was no place to go. There was no, you know, you're part of the BBT. This is what you have to do. Put 17 books out in 2 months, which if you know anything about publishing, it's unheard of. And so that experience of surrendering to that and just working as hard as you possibly could to accomplish the feat, in which they eventually did, just brought everyone to a different level. You know, this idea of breaking the bonds and not, you know, just trying to get comfortable in your service, you know. So it's, and the way he told it is very wonderful. So I highly recommend it if you have access to, you know, the YouTube to look it up.
Thank you.
And then the other thing I wanted to share was this this verse that the prayers of the personified Vedas. There's so much instruction in there. And one of the verses, which one of my favorites, which I memorized, directly pertains to this, what you were talking about you know, using the body and for Krishna and engaging everything in Krishna's service. And it's one. And if you don't, here's what happens. So I'm just going to read the translation. When this human body is used, this is, you know, the Vedas praying to Mahavishnu, you know. When this human body is used for your devotional service, it acts as one's self, friend, and beloved. But unfortunately, although you always show mercy to the conditioned souls and affectionately help them in every way, and although you are their true self, super soul, people in general fail to delight in you. Instead, they commit spiritual suicide by worshipping illusion. Alas, because they persistently hope for success in their devotion to the unreal, they continue to wander about this great fearful world, assuming various degraded bodies. So the whole thing is right there. And Gopi Paranandana Prabhu, who wrote all the purports for these, he has got some wonderful instruction here. And just as a coming attraction.
Number. If you have it there, what is the... I like it when they say, you said 10th canto, so chapter and verse?
Yeah, 1087:22.
22.
87:22.
87:22.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other additions?
One minute.
I'm not...
The word, you mentioned this need for hearing in a certain mood, and that is emphasized in the Bhagavatam. And there's this one word which I keep reminding of, shushu, which comes in right at the beginning, and there's various variations of that. I looked it up on my online dictionary, and as I suspected, the Sanskrit, it has several meanings together. So, the desire or wish to hear, shushusha, reverence, obedience, service. So it's the idea of...
Repeat those.
Yeah.
Reverence,
obedience, and service. It's all built into that one word.
Reverence, obedience, and service.
Hearing the transcendental sound, taking it in with the mood of... It's right there at the beginning, second verse of the whole Bhagavatam. When you hear the Bhagavatam with that mood, Krishna is manifest in your heart. What is the need of any other literature? That's right there in the second verse. So that's setting up the whole way in which we should hear not just the Bhagavatam, but all of Bhagavatam.
Reverence, obedience, and service.
Yeah.
That, as they say, is how a class should be ended, on a very sweet note. Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.